Hey, what's up? My name is Daniela and welcome to the vlog where I'm bringing my TBR to zero. I am. Maybe. So yes, I'm doing my TBR Zero project. In this video, I did a whole announcement video where I talked more in detail about why I'm doing this challenge, and I went through the books that I'm going to be reading. So just very quickly before we start, I'm starting my TBR with 20 books. I'm mainly doing it because I like to read the books on my bookshelves quickly. I don't want them to linger on my shelves, and I've had a lot of these books since spring or summer 2024, and I don't like that, so I just want to read them all and have a clean slate before the end of the year. So that is the deadline. I'm aiming for the whole project to be one vlog, so it will be a longer one, but I also don't want it to be 2 hours long, so we will try to keep it moving. And also, as a bonus, I'm also participating in the winter reading challenge made by Victoria from What Victoria Read. So she has a whole beautiful bingo board with a lot of prompts. I definitely won't be aiming for doing the whole bingo because that would be quite hard to do with like TBR this small and this fixed, but my goal is to make at least one row or one column, and we will just see what happens. So I will just try to fit the prompts as I can, and I will be updating you on this challenge as well during this vlog, and I will leave Victoria's announcement video down below. I'm pretty sure once I post it, it will be too late to join the challenge, but she's been doing these challenges, so maybe there will be a future one, and definitely subscribe to her channel because it is amazing. I think that's everything you need to know at the beginning of this, and as I said, we need to chop, get to it. So let's get to reading. Hello, it's time for our first update, which I should have done earlier, but I didn't. So here we are. I'm wearing my Halloween sweatshirt. So if you saw my recent unhaul, I put some of those books on Vinted, and quite a few of them have sold. So I have been treating myself on Vinted and buying new clothes because for obvious reasons I wasn't going to buy a ton of books. And also, like, I've been in such a aggressive saving mode that I haven't been buying any clothes for like the last year. So now I'm treating myself with fun things like this one. But anyway, I have been reading books, which is good. So let's review them. Start of this challenge, I read Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. So as you might know by this point, Talia Hibbert is one of my favorite authors. I really adore the Brown Sister series, and this is her first, I think, young adult novel that I was highly anticipating, and I think that I hyped it in my mind a little bit too much because, you know, when you love an author and they come with the new book and you're like, oh my god, I need to read it, I need to read it, I need to read it, and then like time passes and you are still hyped, but you are so expecting it to be 5 stars, and then it's not 5 stars, so you are a little bit disappointed, but it's still a really good book. So that's exactly what happened with this book. So it might be 5, it wasn't, so it left me a little bit disappointed, but nonetheless I still very much enjoyed it. So in this book we follow 2 black high schoolers, and they used to be best friends when they were like 12 or so, but then something happened in their friendship and now they are enemies, and now they're both competing for the same scholarship, and you know, so there's a lot of banter and kind of recounting the past. Part of the scholarship competition takes place in this like wilderness trip, so there are some tense situations and they are just figuring out if maybe there can be like a new sort of relationship. So we have Celine and Brad, and there is some good representation. So Celine is a plus size girl and Brad has OCD. There's also a side character with celiac disease, which very nice. And yeah, I liked it fine. They both had a lot of things to figure out between themselves. also with their parents. They are 17 and there was this kind of believable mix of being childish but at the same time being surprisingly mature about some things. I wasn't sure if I would like the wilderness part because that could be a hit or miss for me, but in the end it wasn't such a part of the book actually. So I really liked it. It was 4 stars, but I don't think I will necessarily want to reread it. Maybe I'm just not that much in young adult mood right now, which is not ideal because I have a bunch of young adult books on my TBR. But I think it's kind of a hit or miss with young adult with me these days. So yes, liked it, but I like her adult books much more. And in any case, this brings us to 19 books on my TBR. Yay! Then I read Mr. Loverman by Bernardine Evaristo. So a few years back I read Girl, Woman, Other and I really liked it. So I was thinking of reading something else by this author. And then people were talking about Mr. Loverman. And to be honest, I wasn't super interested in that because it is about an old grumpy man. But then some people like were raving about it and saying good things about it. So I was like, okay, well, let's give it a try. And I'm so glad I did because I actually ended up liking this more than Girl, Woman, Other, I think. So this is about an old black man. He's in his 70s. He was born in Antigua and then he was young. He married a woman and they moved to London and they have been living in Hackney ever since. The marriage has been really rocky. They don't really get along. They're fighting constantly. And the thing that the wife doesn't know is that the main character called Barry, right? Barry, yes. The main character called Barry is gay and he has been having an affair with his best friend called Maurice their whole life. Like it started back in Antigua and now the wife is fed up. She needs things to change, but she actually needs to go back to Antigua to sort some family matters. And so Barry is kind of wondering if he should finally tell her. And you know, there's this option that after all these years, after all this life living in secret and kind of being unhappy, he could just get a divorce and go live with Maurice and have like the last part of his life with him. But obviously it's not necessarily easy for him because like he hasn't done it in all those years. So yeah, the whole book is basically about the relationship between Barry and Maurice and also about the relationship between Barry and his kids. We have a couple of flashbacks into the past, but mostly it takes place in the current timeline. Barry is not a very likable character, okay? He is very, very misogynistic. So it was a bit frustrating at times, but I kind of knew that going in. And in the end, I actually really enjoyed following his character and being in his mind, even though it wasn't always the nicest place. Oh, also, he has a lot of internalized homophobia, so that also plays into the situation. And then there are some scenes when they like meet some younger gay people and there are some discussions, and I just very much enjoyed that. And also I really love the London setting. It was witty, it was sad at times, but it also fun at times, and there were some hopeful bits. So yeah, I actually ended up loving this and I'm giving it 5 stars because I think the author did what they set out to do so well. And that brings my TBR down to 18. As the third book, I read The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. So I very randomly grabbed this book at a book swap. It was for free and I wasn't very excited to read it, I will be honest, but a couple of people again have been raving about it, and every time I mentioned it they were like, oh, it's so good. So I was like, okay, let's give it a try. I didn't know much about it going in, but it is a literary historical fiction and it has a super similar premise to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. We have this main character called Margaret and her father owns an antique bookstore, so she works there. They are in Oxford, I think, or Cambridge. I really need to visit both, so I stopped confusing them. But in either case, she has done a little bit of writing, like some biographies, but nothing major. And then one time she receives a letter and it is from one of the most famous authors of that time named Vida Winter, and Vida Winter is asking to meet her and for her to write her biography, which Margaret is shocked about because she's really not, you know, like renowned author or anything. Vida Winter is a very reclusive author. She has given material to like several biographies to be written, but it is quite obvious that like they are contradictory and it's probably not the truth. But now she's telling Margaret that she is ready to tell the truth. So Margaret goes to stay at her secluded house up in the north and she begins to write her biography. And obviously during the book some little parallels between their lives emerge and we learn about why the author has chosen Margaret. So I was a bit sad that none of my books on my TBR were very seasonal, like autumn-like, but when I started reading this book I realized that it's actually quite gothic-y and it has this amazing atmosphere. Like we have the secluded house. It is like a little bit more wintry, but it starts in the autumn I think, and yeah, we have like old creaky house and we have like maybe like ghost appearances and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. What also surprised me was some of the themes of this book. So it was actually quite more hard-hitting than I expected, with some really dark things discussed. There were themes like child abuse, child neglect, self-harm, grief, loss, just a whole bunch of trauma. A very prominent theme in this book is twins. So twins as the pair and also your identity as being one of the twins. Relationship to your parents, especially a mother wound. So be prepared for that as it really digs deep into that. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. The writing was exquisite. I really enjoyed following Margaret and also the other characters. The atmospheric setting of actually all of the locations, like Margaret's father, a bookshop, and then Vida Winter's house, and then also the village and the house where Vida Winter grew up. All of that was atmospheric, amazing, top-notch. And then we also kind of have the mystery element as the story of Vida Winter's life is slowly unraveling. But yeah, don't go into this expecting this to be like a fast mystery with like a lot of twists. It's more a slow character study and like recounting of the past, and then we kind of have the mystery element as a bonus. So yeah, loved it, 5 stars, I highly recommend, but yeah, do check the content warnings. And that brings my TBR down to 17. And then I hold a book, but it's not what it looks like. So I knew that at my parents' house I still had one birthday package. My birthday was in July, so it's been a while, but because of some circumstances I wasn't able to get to my parents' house until last weekend. So I was finally able to open this package and now it's been added to my TBR, but let me say that I am not mad about it. So this was a gift from Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe, so thank you so much Olivia again. And everybody go subscribe to her channel because it's amazing. And we have Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howard. And to be honest, I don't know that much about this book. Like, I know it is set in Ireland in the 90s and it is queer. It says a tender and heartfelt coming of age tale. So yeah, I will tell you like the synopsis and more about it once we get to it. But this brings my TBR up to 18. And that's the update. Today is the 12th of October. We still have 18 books to read. Am I getting a little bit nervous? Yes. So I should go and I should go read. The 21st of October. It's a whole another day and a whole another week and I'm wearing this again. But yeah, it has been washed in between and it's October, so when else to live in it, right? But for the reading update, I have read a couple of books, but my TBR went down only by one because, surprise, surprise, I got distracted by side quests. But first, I did read a book from my TBR, and that was All This Could Be Different by Sarah Thangam Matthews. In this, we follow a main character called Sneha, who is Indian, and when she was a teenager, her family moved to the States. And now she's telling the story of how when she was 22, she was in the States alone because her family had to move back to India, and she just graduated college and she moved to a new town. She moved to Milwaukee. I always want to say Milwaukee, but yeah, she moved to a new city. She didn't know anyone, and she got this kind of consulting job, and the boss in the company is like a little bit sketchy, but it pays well and she needs the job. She doesn't have citizenship, so she hopes that she will be able to obtain the visa through that job. And also the work provides an apartment for her for free, except for the fact that downstairs there lives the property manager, and she hates Sneha and she's basically bullying her. So the situation is not ideal, and then Sneha is trying to date women and it's not going that great, and she's trying to hopefully make friends. But then things go wrong. She also has a lot of trauma from the past, so she finds herself in a very dark place, and yeah, we kind of follow her life in these turbulent years. So I did enjoy this book. The writing style maybe was a bit too much at times. It also had the style of not using quotation marks, so at times it got a little bit confusing. The main character wasn't super likable, and sometimes neither were her friends, but she has been through a lot. And I did feel for her, but yeah, she was making some not that smart decisions, but then also she was 22 and definitely wasn't making smart decisions all of the time when I was that age. So yeah, I kind of had an ambivalent relationship to her. The book was very depressing, to the point that I was almost wishing that I would be buddy reading this book with someone, because there were times when I didn't want to be alone with the book. But in the first part I was afraid that it would be like all doom and gloom and no hope, which wasn't the case in the end, but the prevalent mood was definitely depressing. It was very slice of lifey, which I don't mind, so there wasn't much of a plot, and it mostly explored the characters, and there were a lot of themes like being an immigrant, having a complicated relationship with your family, some childhood trauma which stem from SA, also race, queerness, choosing who to date when you're a queer person of color, and then also community. That was a big aspect, and then also class and like hating on landlords and stuff like that. Oh, also I forgot to mention that the main character, as a queer person, at the beginning of the story had a problem with non-binary people, and I guess it's set in like 2008 when she was that age, because it says graduating into a recession, and eventually she became less ignorant on that part, but yeah, be aware that it is in there. So I am glad I read it. I'm giving it 4 stars. I don't know if I would recommend it very much, maybe if you're like super in the mood for this kind of book and the themes I mentioned, but yeah, I'm glad it's out of my TBR. So that brings my TBR down to 17, right? Then I read a book that is not on my physical TBR, but it is on my ebook TBR. And I actually started it a few months ago. I started reading it like at lunch break at work on my phone, which I never do. So it was taking me a long time and I wasn't super committed to it. But then I returned to it and I read it on my phone, which, yeah, that's the first. And that is Broken Perfect Lies by Katie Wismer. So Katie has a YouTube channel called Kate's Book Date, and I've been following her for years and years. She originally started as a booktube channel, now she does AuthorTube. So basically I have watched her like write all of her books basically, including this one. In this one we follow a girl named Parker, and she leads a double life because she's secretly this pop star writer, and nobody except for her team and the closest people around her know that. Parker attends her best friend's wedding, and the best friend is not on this secret, and at the wedding everything gets revealed, and also Parker has a stalker, and he gets into the wedding and he actually kills her bodyguard. So now Parker is in hiding in a new apartment building, and the stalker got arrested, but there are some like new messages being delivered to her, and it seems that there is another threat going on, and the team struggles to find a new bodyguard because nobody wants that job, understandably. And then there comes Heath, and Heath's sister is in the hospital and family cannot afford the bills, so he's desperately looking for a job, and he applies for the job of the bodyguard, and he doesn't have any experience with being a bodyguard, but they are desperate, so he gets the job. Well, he actually lies about having experience, so he's hired. So basically, yeah, they are getting to know each other with Parker. So it's the romance, and at the same time there is still the threat because someone is still after Parker. So I enjoyed this book a lot. The writing was good. It was a bit of a wild ride, so the romance was unraveling slowly. It was a very slow burn, but then like suddenly there was this steamy phone scene that came completely out of the blue, and I was like, oh, well, okay. It was very abrupt, so you kind of had to ignore the abruptness and just go with the flow. And then there were like many times when I had to suspend my disbelief. There were many details that didn't make that much sense, or at least weren't explained, and my brain struggles a little bit with that. Like, I like to have the details explained, like ideally it would all make perfect sense, which it didn't, because that was the thing, that he didn't have any bodyguard experience, and first of all, like, he lied about it and they didn't find out or didn't care, but like it had to be like super apparent from the beginning, because they like arrived at the apartment and Parker was like, oh, he's doing the sweep. Like, he doesn't know how to do the sweep of the apartment, and then he was like guarding her, and he was cooking with his earphones in. Like, hello, that is not safe. And little things like that. And then there was some like thrillery suspense scenes, which I enjoyed, but again, there were many details that weren't explained. I did enjoy the romance. Heath was a good guy. There was the phone scene, and then there was also a piano scene, which I also quite enjoyed. And then the conflict was a bit like, it is hard to say like if she had the right to be pissed at him because of what he did. So it is the case of the book maybe being objectively more of a 3, but because I went in it for the ride and I did enjoy it, I'm giving it a 4. I'm reading that obviously didn't change my TBR count, but we continue. So then I realized that it's October and I really want to read witchy books, preferably witchy romances, and I don't have any in my TBR. So I went to the library and I got 2 books. So I got From Bad to Curse by Lana Harper, and then I also got The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I actually don't know if I'm going to read this one because I have a video idea, and for this I would need another book, and I don't own the book, and the library doesn't have it, so I don't know. And obviously I shouldn't be like distracting myself with like many other books, but I did read From Bad to Curse by Lana Harper. This is book 2 in the Witches of Thistlegrove series. The first book being Payback's a Witch. I read the first book last year and really liked it. It was a sapphic romance. And in this one we follow the sister of one of the characters from book 1. I think book 1 was double perspective and we got both of the women's perspective. But this book is single perspective and we follow our main character Issa. She is 25 and this book is set in a small town where there are a couple of witchy families that live among normal people, and the normies don't know that there are witches. This is set in the spring, which I knew but forgot, so it's not necessarily the best for the fall, but then again, like, it's witchy and magical, so for me it's just an autumn book. And at the beginning there is some sort of witchy competition, and one of the witches gets attacked by a very bad curse, and Issy is supposed to be investigating who did it with her arch enemy named Rowan. And she has a big grudge against him because a few years back, well, when she was a teenager, so like 7 years back, she was volunteering at a vet clinic and he is now a vet, and like he was harsh with her because she didn't follow the rules and stuff. So they just didn't get along at all, and from that time they don't like each other. But now they are forced to cooperate, and obviously as they get to know each other, maybe they realize that each other is not so bad. Also, there's the aspect that like they are from these like competing families. Her family deals with death magic and necromancy, and Rowan's family deals with green magic, so like growing things, plants, stuff like that. So they are the exact opposite. I really enjoyed the romance actually. So Rowan was a bit like Mr. Darcy. I was getting some Pride and Prejudice vibes, except for the fact that Rowan's family is very polite, so that's a bit of a difference compared to Darcy. But other than that, there was a lot of pride and a lot of prejudice against each other and against each other's families. So they start as enemies, but I really enjoyed their dynamics and how they treated each other. As with the first book, the romance isn't necessarily the main part of the book because the witchy plot takes a pretty big part of the book. So we have all the investigation and slowly unraveling the mystery. I did like the mystery. I cared about the romance more, but within the investigation we went to all these magical places in the town, and yeah, it was so nice to be back in the world. I'm loving the series, definitely want to continue. So yeah, 4 stars, and really glad I misbehaved and went to the library to get some witchy books that were on my TBR. And now for what I'm currently reading. This update is very long, but it is what it is. So I'm currently reading She Gets the Girl by Rachel Lippincott and Alison Derrick. So this is a young adult contemporary romance, and they are actually like 18, I think. Well, they're starting college, so I was kind of hesitant to go into like high school books because that's not what I'm in the mood right now. So I was glad to find out that they are actually starting college. So we have 2 perspectives. One is Alex, and she just had a huge fight with her girlfriend of 5 months. They were kind of dating, but Alex wasn't ready to like commit, say I love you, all of that stuff. And now she's going to another city. She moved to Pittsburgh for college, so things are very rocky between them. So it's a bit messy. Also, Alex's family situation is not easy because her mom is an alcoholic, and now the girlfriend said some very nasty things to her. So yeah, they just left in a big fight, and now it's like the first day of college. And then the second main character is Molly, and Molly is very introverted. She didn't have any friends in high school. Her mom is her best friend. So now she's moving to college, and she finds out that she actually got a single room, which she didn't want because she wanted to get a roommate. I'm like, girl, be glad that you got a single room. And Molly has a crush on a girl from her high school called Cora, and Cora is also going to the same college, but Molly never speak to her, even though like Cora was super friendly to everyone in high school. So now Molly is hoping that now that she's starting a new life in college, she's going to be more outgoing, and hopefully she will get to know Cora. I'm 52 pages in, and they actually haven't met yet, but the plot is going to be that Molly and Alex meet, and they will work together on, you know, Alex's plan to get together with her ex, and for her ex to believe that she is serious about them, and for Molly to get together with Cora. But obviously it's going to be their romance. And I also started one of my non-fictions, so I have 4 non-fictions on my TBR, and I really wanted to start one alongside with a fiction book because I can't read several fiction books usually, but I can read like fiction and non-fiction. So I did start Neuroqueer by CJ DeBarra. I'm only on page 20, so not many thoughts so far. I will talk more about this one once I'm further into it. And then I also want to update you on Victoria's Winter Reading Challenge, because I haven't been doing that, but the first few books that I read for my project actually didn't count because I read them back in September, whereas this challenge started in October. But now I have a few books that I was able to put on the bingo board, and I'm fully expecting to maybe move things around to be able to reach like a whole row or column, because yeah, some books could count for multiple prompts. But for now I have put the 13th Tale as the seasonal read, because it was kind of a gothic-y autumnal book, so it was perfect. Then I put All This Could Be Different on Queer Rep. It could count maybe for a couple more, but it seemed perfect because I got it in Gaze the Word, so that is just perfect. And then Broken Perfect Lies I put at even page count, and this one might not move because I don't think this counted for basically anything else. And now From Bad to Cursed could actually count for quite a few prompts. Like, it is one book, one prompt, but it could count for a continuous series. Green or red on the cover, because there is a little bit of red on the cover, but not that much. It could count for nature on the cover, because yeah, there is some nature on the cover. But I think for now I'm going to put it on library or borrowed book, because ideally I wouldn't have that many of borrowed books until the end of the year, for obvious reasons. So that's the board progress. I'm not close to any bingo on the board yet, but we will just see what comes out of it. One more thing, because I'm going on so many side quests with this project, I had decided that I'm going to split the vlog into two. So originally I thought that I would just read the 20 books in one vlog, but too many things happening. So the new plan is to reach 10 and end the first part, and then in the second part we'll go from 10 to 0. Hello! I have finished some books, so namely She Gets the Girl. So I guess I kind of told you the synopsis in the last update. But yeah, I was right to think that Alex's girlfriend was a red flag from the beginning. But yes, basically this was very focused on the romance side of the things. So Alex focusing on her hot girlfriend or whatever, and Molly focusing on getting Cora, and then obviously Alex and Molly doing a lot of things together, because like Alex was trying to help Molly, and I loved it. It was so precious. I loved how they were the opposite of each other. So Molly was a bit shy, but you know, had a lot of personality and interests when you get to know her, and Alex was a bit of a hurricane who was very blunt, but she was just trying to keep her head above water. She immediately has to get a job in the college town, so she starts working at a food truck, and she's constantly worried about her mother, who is an alcoholic, and basically the mother only contacts her when she needs money from her. So it's a very sad situation, and Molly is also having some mom issues, kind of in the opposite side. Molly didn't really have friends in high school, so her and her mom are super duper close, but now Molly wants to be a bit more independent, and you know, she just needs a bit of space from her mom, and her mom doesn't necessarily get that at the beginning. Also, her mom is Korean, and she has a complicated relationship with her heritage, so that's also something that's discussed. They are just starting college, but it's very little about the actual classes, which I wouldn't mind if it were more about the classes, but I was also fine that it was mostly focused on what they were doing in the free time, and it was just so fun, like all of the activities you know, Molly and Alex did together. I loved how they were kind of enemies at the beginning and the banter, and then they slowly became friends, and then they realized that there's something romantic between them. I also like the big brother element, not like 1984, but Molly had her older brother already living in Pittsburgh, and that's how it was with me. Like when I was moving to Prague to go to college, my brother was already living here, so always love to see the brother-sister relationship. So yes, it was super fun, super cute. I would really recommend it, and I'm giving it 5 stars. I lost the count a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that puts me at 16. I hope that's correct. And then I was a bit naughty again and got another book from the library because I just really wanted to read another witchy book because it's October. Currently the 28th of October, so it's still high witchy season. So I went and got The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. So this has been a witchy book that I've been wanting to read for years. Every time someone reads it, I feel like everyone is raving about it, and it was one of the books that I just have a feeling about. You know, sometimes I heard about a book and I immediately thought that like I'm going to love it, and I did. So the blurb on the cover says the cozy magical romance you've been waiting for, and it is very cozy magical, but I wouldn't say it's a romance. I would say it's a witchy book that has romance. So we follow Mika, who is a 31-year-old witch. She was born in India and then she was brought to Britain by her guardian named Primrose. She is an orphan, and Primrose wasn't really around when she was growing up, so she was brought up by a string of nannies, and every time the nannies found out that she is a witch, Primrose came and erased their memories, so nobody even remembers Mika. And also Primrose is kind of the head of the British witches. They meet once in 3 months, but basically Primrose insists that it is much safer for them to live separately and not to have contact with each other. So Mika has been very lonely. She also struggled with relationships, friendships, because it might not be safe to disclose that she is a witch or people react weirdly, etc. And because she was craving for a community and a creative outlet, she studied socials where she pretends that she is a witch. Well, for the general public it is a pretense, obviously it is true. And that's how the people from the Nowhere House find her. So one day she gets a message and she gets offered a job of tutoring children in the Nowhere House, and so she goes there to find out more. So in the Nowhere House there is a small group of adults who are bringing up 3 small witches, so they are ranging from 7 years to 10 years, and Mika is brought here to tutor them, and then also there are some secrets that she's slowly learning. And one of the adults is Jamie, who is 36, and it is then Jamie's and Mika's romance. And everything about it was just super cozy and magical and amazing. Yeah, this is exactly the type of book I love. With the tone and the mood, it reminded me a little bit of Legends and Lattes. So we have Mika adjusting to her new life in the Nowhere House. She doesn't have any tutoring experience, so it's a bit of a learning curve. And then also for the first time she feels some sense of community because everyone in the house knows that she's a witch, and they're all very welcoming, and you know, they kind of accept her to their found family. But at the same time she is terrified of that because in the past she has always lost everything. And Jamie also has a complicated past, so during the book we have both of the characters kind of confronting some of the things from their past. There are also some discussions on a broader scale, you know, the people, the non-magical people accepting or not accepting witchy people. I ended up really loving the writing style and the tone of the book because, as I said, it is like cozy, magical, etc. But at the same time there are like swear words and spicy banter sometimes. I did enjoy the chemistry between Jamie and Mika. It was kind of the classical grumpy versus sunshine, but the grumpy actually has a big heart. Even the children were quite fun to read about, so yes, I'm very glad I got it from the library, and I'm giving it 5 stars. And now back to my actual TBR. So I finished the first non-fiction book that was on my TBR, and that was Neuroqueer. Neurodivergent Guide to Love, Sex and Everything in Between by C.J. Dibara. And this is a book about the topic that is kind of half memoir, half research based. The author is non-binary and queer, and they were born in a small town in Ireland, so obviously no representation. So it's a lot about their personal experience. I tapped a lot of things. Can you see that? I tapped a lot of things that I found relatable, or some things I want to look up. A lot of the ideas or concepts or research information I already knew, but there were some interesting tidbits that I either haven't heard about, or it was nice to hear about them again. And part of it is kind of about the general struggles of ADHD in life and relationships, but a really big chunk of it is about sex, which I thought that maybe it would be more balanced, but oh well. It is a bit hard to rate, but I guess I would give it 4 stars. I'm glad I read it, and I think it could help some people to connect the dots and understand themselves better. And it's definitely good that people are writing about these topics, you know, ADHD in women and their relationships and sexual lives. So I think it is a pretty valuable source. And for the winter reading challenge update, I have put She Gets the Girl on the secondhand book space, because yes, I got it from an online secondhand bookshop. And then the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches I put to recommended book, because loads of people have been recommending that. And then You're Queer I put on the non-fiction spot. I'm getting kind of close to a bingo in the second column, but there is the Match the Cover to Your Drink, which is something that, for one, I keep forgetting about, and then I don't know, it feels like it might be a bit challenging, because like most of the time the only thing I drink is water and tea, so you know, I don't know, not that many colors. And now we're kind of getting to the point in my TBR challenge where I think She Gets the Girl was like the last book I was kind of excited about, and now I'm like, I'm not excited about either of these. Like, and you might say like, well, just unhold them. And no, because I'm still interested, but I'm not excited. So I decided to make it a bit more fun and do a wheel picks my next read, because everyone has been using these beautiful wheels and I want to use a pretty wheel, and also I just can't decide. So we're going to choose from these 8, I think. Because while it would be like a fun chaos to throw the Christmas books in, I really don't want to read Christmas books right now. You know, ideally they would be like end of November or December, so minus the Christmas books. These are the 8 that the wheel will help me choose from. But before that, I'm also choosing my next non-fiction to have something to read alongside the fiction, and I am choosing Ace by Angela Chen, because I feel like it's kind of on a similar topic as the last one, but I don't know if you know the sound on TikTok, like, I need to talk to gay people. So now, after reading this one, I'm a little bit like, I need to talk to ace people. But anyway, let's do the wheel pick. So there are a couple of books that are a harder read, or I'm expecting them to be, but obviously they have to be done in either case, so we might as well get them over with. But yeah, so just give it to me. Yeah. Oh. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah. It's The Underground Railroad, which is exactly one of the books that I have been dreading a little bit, because it is a historical fiction about sad things. We have it right here, and historical fiction about sad things is usually not my jam, but I do own this. And actually Kitty from Kitty and the Books said that like she really liked this, and from the books that I had to read, like this was maybe her favorite, so that is promising. Also, this is a bit chaotic and I don't even know if I have the right number, but this puts us at 15, right? Well, in either case, it will be correct on the screen. So we're going to give this book a try, and I will tell you more about it once I'm actually a bit into it, because I don't know that much. So yeah, let's go. Actually, let's try to do the matching your drink to your cover challenge today. Does it match? Not really, but in case I don't do any better until the end of the challenge, I might just use it. So my cover is red, like pretty bright red. I'm also currently on page 127. It is going. And I'm drinking some rooibos tea, which looks completely brown on the camera. In reality, it's more red, but not that much red. But I don't know, my mug is red. Does that count? Well, it also doesn't focus, so I'm just gonna go. So yesterday I set myself the challenge to finish this whole book before I can watch the new season of Selling Sunset, and today I kind of regret it already. So I might cave in earlier, but not tonight. But like, come on, like when there's a new season of Selling Sunset, that's basically the only time that I watch something else than Gilmore Girls, so it's a special time. Hello, I have finished the Underground Railroad actually quite a few days ago, so I'm due for an update, and not that much reading has been happening in the last week or so, which is not ideal. But anyway, I don't think I've said that much about this book, except for the fact that I was majorly intimidated because hard-hitting historical fiction is not my jam. But in the end, I have to say that it went better than I expected. So this book is taking place in the first half of the 19th century, and we follow Cora, who was born on a slave plantation in Georgia. Cora's mom managed to escape the plantation when Cora was around 11, and nobody really knows what happened with her. And then when Cora is about, I think 17, something like that, she is approached by a man from the plantation, and he basically invites her to go with him because he plans to escape the plantation. So we follow Cora on her journey, and there's the element of an actual underground railroad, an actual underground train tunnel that they are able to take, and the train takes them to across the border. And then we follow Cora as she tries to escape further north, and like what life looks like in the different states and yeah, different part of the journey. A big problem is that there's this guy called Ridgway who is a slave catcher, and he basically failed to catch Cora's mother the years before, so now he's like super set on finding Cora. So I ended up liking this book more than I expected. You really can't say you enjoyed it because like horrific things are happening in this book, but I definitely appreciated it more than I expected, and I'm very glad I read it. I would say that the beginning of the book was probably like one of the hardest parts to read about, because there was this horrific abuse and torture of the people on the plantation, and at that point I could have easily DNF'd it, but I didn't. And yeah, that's not to say that horrific things aren't happening later in the book, but I really liked Cora as the main character, and I was really rooting for her. And even though horrific things were happening, it was very interesting how it was almost kind of slice of lifey in the various parts of the journey, because no matter where you are, like as long as you are alive, life kind of keeps happening even though it's horrible. And it was interesting to see what was the same and what was different in the different stages and the places and the routines. So I would say that the plot was executed pretty well. In the end, some of the things wrap up and it's partially open, which makes sense because we were just following Cora on a part of the journey. I would have liked if the Underground Railroad was a bigger part of the story, because it was quite atmospheric and a really interesting element of the story, but at the same time it made sense that it was just a kind of transition. It was just like a means of transport, so we didn't spend that much time there. When it comes to writing, I had some problems with it, so you can kind of like see on one hand that it's a good writing, like it has won the Pulitzer Prize, but at the same time I found it a bit confusing and a tiny bit clunky at times. He had the habit of kind of introducing new topics or new concepts in a way that you would think that you're supposed to know what he's talking about already, but we don't know. So that really kind of took me out of the story, because I became confused, because I thought that he's talking about something that has been mentioned, but he was not. He was just talking about it in that way. There are some complaints in the reviews that writing can feel a little bit detached, and I can agree, but I think that it's mostly a good thing, because the horrific things we're reading about, if we were in the character's head and we would really like get the whole emotional and physical impact, I think it would be really hard for me to read. And some people even said like it should have been in first person, to which I say like absolutely not. I liked what the author did with Cora's mother storyline. She's not on page that much at all, but she is an important force in the story, because Cora hasn't forgiven her for abandoning her at the plantation, and then the fact that she escaped is an important fact, because now Ridgway is very set on finding Cora. And I liked how that plot element was wrapped up, even though, ouch. So except for the fact that this kind of book is not something I like to read a lot. I mainly had some gripes with the writing, but other than that, I was worried that it would be a little bit, well, dry is not the perfect word, but like one-sided in the sense of it being all misery, and that we wouldn't be able to like connect to the characters, which proved to be wrong, because I thought that the author managed to balance the horrific parts with some hope, and then the slower parts with some action. I also definitely learned some things, so in the end I'm actually very glad that I read it. It, you know, appeared in my hands very randomly, and I wouldn't choose it for myself, but I'm glad I read it. So I'm giving it 4 stars, I think, and this brings the TBR down to 14. And as you saw, I very badly tried to match it to my drink for the winter reading challenge, so that is where it is going for now. And then I have studied Ace by Angela Chen. I'm currently on page 107, and I will sum up my thoughts once I'm done. I have to say that I'm probably not in the best mindset to read this type of non-fiction, and non-fiction that is personal to me, so I'm forcing myself a bit through it, but it is fine. I'm liking the book, so we will get through it. And because once I am finished with Ace, the TBR will be down to 13, and that means that we still need 3 more books to reach 10 and to end the first part of the challenge. And this vlog, which is like, what am I even doing? It's already the 6th of November. So let's choose the next fiction book. Yeah, we have some options, and the only one that I don't want to get is The Color Purple, because it's another like hard-hitting historical fiction, and yeah, I would like some lighter read after the Underground Railroad, but I mean, the wheel will do what it wants to do. So let's spin, shall we? Oh, I'm scared. Okay. Okay. Ooh, okay. So we got Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters, which is also a historical book, and it's a bit of a chunker. It's almost 500 pages, but it's also a sapphic romance, so there is a sapphic romance. So at least there is something when it comes to historical stuff. I've never read anything by this author. I'm definitely curious to try a book by her, and I've been putting this book off for a very long time. It is now, I think, one of the 2 oldest books in my TBR, and conveniently it was like on the top of the stack right there. So I don't know, maybe the wheel knew something, but in either case, it is one of the biggest books on the TBR right now, and let's go read it. Okay, let's talk about Ace, shall we? So, long story short, I absolutely loved this book, giving it 5 stars. I think everyone should read it, which I don't say very often, but I genuinely think that absolutely everyone could benefit from this book. It doesn't matter if you're Ace, you think you may be Ace, you know someone who is Ace, you probably do, or if you know that you're allosexual, which is the opposite of asexual. It absolutely doesn't matter. I think that, yeah, everyone can learn something from this, and it's not a topic that is so widely talked about yet. So I'm so glad that books like this exist, and we should definitely talk about them more, read them more, share them, all of that good stuff. This book covers a lot. The author says that, you know, asexuality is a spectrum, so there is definitely not like one ace experience. So we have the author's experience and a lot of other people's experiences. The dedication says, for everyone who has wanted to want more, which, like, what an opening. It talks a lot about compulsory sexuality, of course, how society views sex and how it is pushed upon everybody, which is one of the things that I think is beneficial for everyone to read about, because it's always good to try to detangle yourself, what your identity is and what you want, from what society is telling you that you should be or what you should want. Also, another reason why I think that there should be more education about asexuality is because, I mean, it has been my experience that, like, in my early 20s I came across the word ace and, you know, someone's experience, and I didn't recognize myself in it because it talked about not experiencing attraction, and I was like, well, I am attracted to people, yeah, but like romantically and aesthetically and sensually. So the split attraction model, the model that there are different attraction and it's not just like one whole lump, is another thing that is beneficial learning about. By the way, I identify as grey ace, which made things the more confusing. So basically I only realized I was on the ace spectrum like in my mid to late 20s, and so I'm glad that nowadays there are so many more resources. There's TikTok, which will definitely sooner or later tell you what you are, and that these days people can maybe learn things about themselves much sooner than my generation, and not even speaking about older generations. One of the topics that I liked most in this book was how it talked about intersectionality. So obviously asexuality interacts with other aspects of people's identity like gender, race and disability, which is another thing that is personal to me. And it talked about how if you're both on the ace spectrum and disabled, you might find yourself having trouble fitting into both of those communities in this intersection, because the ace spectrum is like rightfully fighting against the notion that asexuality is a disease, that it's something wrong with yourself, that like your hormones are messed up or whatever. And on the other hand, the disability community is fighting against the notion that disabled people are often infantilized and viewed as non-sexual being as default. So you can see the problem. Realizing you're on the ace spectrum can be a wild ride, both like personally and in relationships. And let me tell you that the way society reacts to people being on ace spectrum is a wild ride also sometimes from within the LGBTQ community, which no comment. But again, education and speaking more about it is one way to hopefully help the situation. Obviously there will still be people who don't want to not be ignorant, but there is a huge number of people who want to educate themselves. I could probably talk about it much more, but let's move on. So let's just remember that it's a great book. Go read it, talk about it, gift it to other people, etc. So the next book I read was Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters, and my oh my, this was also a wild ride. So this is a sapphic historical fiction. I just noticed that on the back it says a kind of feminist Dickens, which is funny. We follow a girl named Nancy, or Nan. She is 17 or 18 and she lives with her family in a small English town close to Canterbury. Her family owns an oyster restaurant, so the whole family works there, and she's kind of dating a boy from the village. But what really excites her most in her life is that every week they go to Canterbury to the like theater, and there are these entertainment numbers, and one day there is a new entertainer, and that is a young woman named Kitty who is cross-dressing as a man, and she's having a lot of success with her performance in this town. And basically Nan becomes completely obsessed with her, and she goes almost every day to see her, and eventually they meet, and basically she completely falls in love with her. And this book starts in the 1880s, so obviously it's a bit tricky with this whole situation and liking women. But what happens is that Kitty hires her as her dresser. They go together to London. Kitty is trying to build her career there, and they do become lovers. But this is just the beginning, because let me tell you that Nancy is in for a wild ride in London, and she's going to live like a couple of whole different lives during the next like 5 or 10 years. This got steamy, very steamy. It features a horrible abusive relationship, which was very tough to read about. And then it also kind of got into the socialist worker right movement, which I didn't expect. But it's just, there was so much in this book. Near the end of the book, this book found me sobbing, and it wasn't even because of like the main character's love life or anything like that, but there was just one little thing that always gets me. The writing is great, and there is also quite a lot about queer culture in London in that time, so that was great. So if you like historical fiction, if you like reading sapphic books, I would recommend it. But be aware that there are triggers. I gave it 4 stars. I will probably never reread it, but I'm glad I went through it. Then I read a book that was probably the most challenging of all of them, and it was Los Cinco y el Tesoro de la Isla by Enid Blyton. So this is the first famous 5 book, 5 on the Treasure Island. I don't even know what it's called in English, because I grew up on Enid Blyton books, but I read them in Czech. So I have read this first book maybe like 20 times, but always in Czech, so haven't read it in English, and now I have read it in Spanish. I'm still a beginner. The only book I have read in Spanish previously was like very little children's book, so going for a middle grade was definitely an upgrade. And I was just reading through it. I wasn't looking up words really, so I was very pleased that in most of the scenes I could understand what's going on, because like obviously I have read the story so many times, but not for a long time, so it's not like I remembered absolutely everything. So yeah, I knew what was going on. I kind of really got into it. It was a bit challenging, but it was also fun. So definitely looking forward to reading more books in Spanish. I think it's a great way to get into the language and really immerse yourself in it. And as far as for the story, yeah, it's just the biggest nostalgia of my childhood basically. If you've never read it, we have these 3 siblings who go to meet their cousin for the first time. They live in the Kirin Bay, and the family owns the island, and they go on some adventures on the island. I always remember how like there is so much good food in these books, and you know, it's pretty wholesome. So that was this book. We will see if I will stick with middle grade in Spanish, or if I upgrade to young adult maybe. Well, I do have The Little Prince in Spanish, so that could be like relatively simple. Well, at least it's short. And then the last book that I read that brought me to 10 books on my TBR was Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong. So this is an amazing collection of essays from all kinds of different people. There are so many essays with different experiences. This book definitely broadened my horizon and made me think a lot. With disability, everyone's experience is hugely different because each disability is different, and also like everyone's experience of even the same disability can be very, very different. But there are also things that we have in common. There are so many amazing essays, but one of them that really stuck with me was from a person who is deaf and found themselves in prison, and the injustice that they were going through in the prison because of their disability was infuriating and heartbreaking. And I know that if I found myself in prison for whatever reason, I would be so fucked. And unfortunately, the same thing can be said about hospitals. And yeah, those are the situations that you can easily find yourself in, like either hospital or even prison, even if you didn't do anything bad. So yeah, that really stuck with me. Unfortunately, while I was reading this book, Alice Wong passed away, which was very sad. The work she did in the disability community will always be appreciated, so go read this book. Let's talk about disability more. So that did bring me to 10 books on my TBR, and the last thing I want to do in this vlog is update you on my winter reading challenge by What Victoria Read. I put Ace on the short book prompt, which was under 250 pages. Ace without the notes has 188 pages. Tipping the Velvet I put on the oldest book on your TBR, which was a bit of a funny one because I was thinking that like I can wait with this one until the very end, because like when there are 2 books remaining on my TBR, one of them would be the oldest. But I think this was actually one of the very oldest books on my TBR. I got it last spring, so you know, I fit it very well. Then the Famous 5 book I put on reread, and yeah, this was the only reread on my TBR challenge. It was a bit of a, you know, I put it there because it's another language and challenge, but technically like it was not a book I haven't read, but yeah, it was in this challenge in the TBR project, so luckily I had something to fill this prompt. And with Disability Visibility I filled the disability rep. So that is all for Project TBR Part 1. In case you haven't seen it, I uploaded a whole video about how I was feeling, what I was thinking mid-project, so you can go see that. And the second part of Project TBR Zero, where I will read the remaining 10 books in my TBR, will be coming, so stay tuned for that. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments, or just leave me an emoji to let me know you were here. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!